Hello there, welcome to the garden. I am out here doing my kind of daily garden check, and I kind of can't believe, oh, I just realized I left the door open. I should probably close that so the cats don't escape. I kind of can't believe that I'm gonna be direct sowing things in this garden in just a couple months. I pulled out, I just dropped. Okay, let's try this. I pulled out my direct sow seeds for 2023. These are the seeds I'm gonna be direct sowing, the flower seeds. And I did a video last week about all of the vegetables that I'm gonna be direct sowing. It's not a whole lot. I'm gonna be starting a lot of vegetables inside. And I also plan to start a ton of my flowers inside. All of my cosmos, I may start even a couple zinnias. I'm gonna start, coleus, petunias, all kinds of things. Some of those are actually already started. But I'm gonna be starting even some of those flowers that are easy to direct sow probably 2 or 3 weeks before my last frost. And there's a couple reasons for this. One is the slug pressure that I've talked about. I have so many slugs in this garden that seedlings can be tricky. It can be really, really hard to get seedlings to maturity, even with slug bait and stuff like that. So one of my plans is to start things indoors or in the unheated greenhouse. But then another thing is that flower seeds, I tend just personally to have a really hard time with spacing. And when they're seedlings, I tend to sow them too close together, and I just have trouble getting my plants to really get up and producing and blooming. I can sometimes struggle with that. So by having started plants, it's just a little bit easier for me. This is just a personal thing, like trial and error I've learned for me. It's a little easier to have a start that I put in. I know it has space. It also, because some of my sunlight is a little part shade-ish in areas, if it's a start, it's already gotten past that first couple inches of growth. And so it's already getting up into more sunlight if I'm planting it amongst other plants. I just tend to pack all of my containers pretty full. I pack my raised beds pretty full. And so sometimes when you're seeding little seedlings in and around plants that are already established, which is often also happening in my garden, it can just be a little harder for them to take off. So I'm kind of trying to counter that by using a lot of starts that I create myself. So just things that I'm starting inside as opposed to direct sowing. But there are a couple flowers that do super well direct sowing. I always have good luck sowing them. And so I am going to continue to direct sow them. And that's what I've got in this bag here. So let me pull these out and I'll just kind of get them in order a little bit. Let me see what we've got here. So many good things. It's so exciting to see. Okay. The first category of seeds that are really good to direct sow. First category is going to be sunflowers. So sunflowers are a nice big seedling, so they tend to not have the same kind of struggles, not quite as bad with the slugs. They tend to be able to get up and past other plants and find sunlight and all of that pretty easily. Now, I don't have room for a ton of sunflowers in this garden, but I'm gonna find a couple spaces and I may tuck them into a few little corners. And even if they don't get the fullest sun or they're a little bit packed in close to other things, they're just gonna get a little shorter, but they're still gonna grow. For the most part, I don't have an issue with that. So I have a few different varieties, and I actually don't have the seed. I'm gonna have to go grab my seed collection, because the first one that I'm gonna be planting direct sowing are Mexican sunflowers. Tithonia is another name for them. They are just these beautiful, stunning red flowers. They turn into these gorgeous trees. I've grown them the last 2 seasons, and I don't know if I can ever have a garden without them. One of the biggest reasons is that they bring in so many butterflies. I have had more and more pollinators year after year after year in this garden, and one of the things that I really attribute to that is putting in plants that grow really, really tall, because they kind of act like, I don't know, signs, hey, garden here, and everything just ends up finding the garden. All the pollinators end up coming. These plants are just covered with butterflies all season long once they start blooming. So I'm definitely going to be planting some Mexican sunflowers. I know I have seeds for them. I just don't know where those seeds got off to. I may also do 1 or 2 of these Evening Star sunflowers, just this kind of like pretty sort of, I don't know what you would call that color, kind of autumnal sort of colors, really in line, burnt orange they say, that's right, rusty red, kind of in line with my more antique sort of color scheme that I'm going for this year. Really, really pretty, and they are a branching sunflower, and for me, I tend to like to grow branching sunflowers because I have such a small space. For me to grow a flower that's gonna bloom once and then die, it's hard for me to devote that kind of space to like a single stem and bloom. So something like a branching sunflower will grow up and then it'll just keep flowering and flowering off the branches. So it's just a little bit more like bang for your buck, you know, and I like that. So I'm gonna do that. And then I also got, and I'm trying to remember if this one is branching too. It is. I think I was planning this for my garden plot. I do have a community garden plot that I'm going to be doing this year, but I may stick like 1 or 2 of these in somewhere. It's this really pretty Velvet Queen sunflower, and I just loved that color. Deepest shade of burgundy. Yeah, oh my gosh, so stunning. So I liked that, and I thought for the garden plot where I have a little bit more space and I can grow something just for like 1 flower, I don't think this is a branching one. Here's another branching sunflower, and it's really pretty. This is Vanilla Ice. I actually grew this in my green stock, and it was really, really beautiful, and it branched and branched and flowered and did really well in that small kind of growing kid space. So I am going to do some more Vanilla Ice, probably in the green stock. This is a 5-foot size sunflower, but here's what happens when you grow it in a container, small space or something like that. When I grew it in the green stock, it only grew about like 2 feet tall. It was super cute. So I'm just gonna do that because I think it's adorable as like a little mini sunflower, and it grew so well doing that that's great. I did pull out a couple more, like this is the Birds and the Bees sunflower that I thought for the garden plot would be kind of fun, and the birds really like it. So I grabbed that, and this is just a pretty 6 to 8 foot tall, gorgeous sunflower. I've grown these in like a really, well, my garden plot a couple years ago, and I really liked it, and the birds and the bees did really love it. And then I have this Elves blend. It's like all dwarf short sunflowers, really cute, kind of classic looking sunflowers. So I may pop this, you know, midsummer when I feel like throwing something into a hole in the garden. I'm just gonna keep this one out. I don't know if I'm actually going to do it, but I like to sometimes just pop in like a seed here or there. And these are 16 to 24 inch sunflowers. I have one other kind of sunflowers that I'm gonna actually be starting ahead and then planting out. I got some Sunfinity sunflower seeds, but the seeds were really expensive, and I just wanna make sure that they actually really grow and everything. So they are in my start ahead lists, but you may see those sunflowers in the garden as the season moves on. Okay, the next plant that I'm going to be direct sowing is actually kind of, well, it's not technically flower, maybe. It's kind of on the edge between a flower and an herb, but you can enjoy it for both, and that is dill. I have just a bunch of dill because it's one of my favorite garden scents. I think it smells so delicious, and I do like to put it in bouquets because it's a really pretty kind of filler flower too. So I have bouquet dill, I have an elephant dill, I have a mammoth Long Island dill, another elephant dill. I'm gonna sprinkle these in a few different areas throughout the garden, as I said, just to have that really pretty like herb. Let me show you. It makes a really nice, you know, flower. Obviously the caterpillars like it too. I'm really into supporting the pollinators this year. So I'm gonna throw that in a few different places. I have another dill, again, another thing that I'm gonna be starting ahead of time, like in some kind of container just to make sure it really grows well, and that is tetra dill. It's a bit of a bushier dill and it gets a little bit fuller, and so I actually really prefer that. I just noticed my daughter's little scoop. My little garden scoop is sitting behind me. I really like that dill because it tends to get little bit just fuller and bushier and create more of a good sized plant. Sometimes some of these dills struggle a little bit. Again, I'm growing in not ideal conditions because a lot of the spaces where I grow these things, it's not completely full sun, but the tetra dill is such a vigorous bushy dill that it can kind of compensate for not having as much full sun, and it usually does really well for me. So that's kind of my plan. But dill is another thing that does direct sow really well, so I'm gonna stick some of that in the garden. Then a flower that is always good to direct sow, and I actually talked about this because I had one of these seed packets was stuck in my vegetable bag, but nasturtiums. You've got to have, you gotta have nasturtiums in the garden. I feel like they're just the most classic garden flowers. So I have this really pretty butterscotch nasturtium, which is just gorgeous. They go full sun to part shade. They're gonna go right in that raised bed right here. They also are really fun in a container. So I have butterscotch and I have apricot, which is like such a stunning kind of like orangey apricot-y with like a deep colored center. Beautiful. These are just fun to put in different spots and let them kind of grow. They spill out of a grow bag really nicely. They can trail out of a container, and they're super easy to direct sow. Again, these aren't a really big seed, so their seedlings tend to be a bit bigger, and that tends to work slightly better when I'm dealing with the slug and snail pressure, although I still will be having to bait all around these to ensure that we don't have, bigger issues with them, but super good for starting. I've heard people say that they're hard to start inside, like they don't do as well. They don't like to have their roots disturbed. I've also heard people say that the only way they can get them going is starting them ahead. So it kind of just depends on your garden, but I like to direct sow them and I haven't had an issue. I do have to get them direct sown early because they kind of start to die out by the middle of the summer. They don't really like my heat. I end up pulling them out like mid-July. I'm hoping this part shade bed will provide them enough protection that they can keep growing throughout the whole season. But that is one thing with nasturtiums for me. I have to kind of know that I'm going to be replacing them at some point this season because they're not going to make it all the way through the summer heat. It's just, it's too much. They also are one that get kind of, their leaves die a lot, their flowers die a lot, so you end up doing a lot of deadheading with them and pruning of the leaves. So that's just something to know too. For me, to keep them looking really nice, it's just a little bit more maintenance, and I don't mind deadheading, I don't mind trimming at all, but yeah, it's just something to know. If you've never grown nasturtiums before, they're also edible and the leaves are edible. So I don't really eat them, but you can, so that's kind of cool. Okay, and then the last, saved the best for last, my favorite category, probably this might be my favorite flower in the garden, zinnias. All the zinnias. Oh, and I have one Dara in there. I've never grown Dara before, but I'm gonna toss this in some of my perennial sections and let this be a little bit of like a kind of whimsical cottagey addition. It's just like kind of Queen Anne's lace vibes. Never grown it before, but it'll be fun to try. Okay, back to the zinnias. So I went for all the like antique Queen Lime series, really pretty. Queen Lime zinnias have all the like, they just have these like antique kind of colors. So I got the Queen Lime red, really kind of beautiful antique-y red. So not like that bright, apple red, but a little bit, something a little bit different. Oh, hello. I also got the Queen Lime orange, same kind of thing. It'll be a little kind of vintage colored looking. And then I got the Queenie Lemon pink. Oh, I mean peach, not pink. I mean, if that's not like the perfect for my apricot peachy color tones this year, I just think that's so beautiful. I'm so excited for these. So I will direct sow most of these, but I'm also might start a couple in like seed cells in the unheated greenhouse or something. I just am, this is just an extra broom corn. I don't know how my seeds got all mixed up this year. I've had a lot of things in different places. I just think this is so beautiful. And all these Queen Limes, Queenie ones, they just all have that like vintage tone. And they're just kind of muted and beautiful. They're gonna go in the raised bed over there. And I'll probably just do a couple of each and really let them get big and full and huge. I do have a Cinderella peach. So these are the kind that create kind of like, they look like a little cupcake top. They have kind of like a fluffy top. Now the thing with the Cinderella ones is that they don't always create that cupcake top. I grew Cinderella lilac and they just looked like purple zinnias. So I'm gonna try to make sure this gets like enough sun and water and whatever it needs to create that real like cupcakey Cinderella-y look. But I had to get the peach color because I'm on this peach apricot trend, and I just, yeah, cream, yellows, and pinks, single, doubles, Scabiosa type, which has the little fluffy top. It's gonna be, those are gonna be gorgeous. And then the last one, I did get a dwarf variety. So this is the button box mix. So it has really petite stems, only about 10 inches tall. Most zinnias are like 3 feet tall. Zinnias get really, really big. So these only get 10 inches. They're a mix of colors, perfect for containers. So I may do a container or two with these little dwarf kind of zinnias because I think they would just be kind of fun and add a little bit of like of whimsy in containers. If you grow zinnias in containers and they like don't have as much space as their ideal space, they can sometimes create smaller flowers, like the flower heads will be smaller, but they're still gonna get pretty tall. I haven't found that they stay as short. Sunflowers, really, if you grow them in a packed area, they'll stay really short in height. I haven't noticed that as much with zinnias. They just kind of don't look as happy and they kind of like have smaller flower heads. So if you want shorter zinnias, I really recommend getting a dwarf variety like this because it'll just work better. And you can just direct sow them right into a container and they'll just come up and bloom and be gorgeous. So most of these are going to be in raised beds, but then maybe I'll do a container with the dwarf zinnias. But I want to give a good section of this raised bed over here over to zinnias because they really are one of my favorite flowers and they're just so gorgeous. Oh my gosh, they're one of the first flowers I grew in the garden. They're such a like staple garden flower. They're so stunning and they are so worth giving space to. And another one that the pollinators really, really love. You'll get all kinds of pollinators, a lot of those really tiny little like local bees and all kinds of things over zinnias. So those are really great. All right, so those are the plans for direct sowing. This is probably the smallest collection of direct sow flowers that I've ever done, but I'm trying to really maximize how these plants do, not overplant things, make sure they have what they need. And yeah, as I said earlier, I just think it'll be easier if I start plants ahead and have them ready, except for these few. So for the most part, they're gonna go in the 2 beds. I'll show you over here. So this is where the zinnias are gonna go. They're all gonna be in like this corner right here. It gets a lot of really good full sun. It's a really nice section and I can put in, I think about, you know, 6 to 8 plants in kind of like a 2-foot square area. And then over here along the front of this bed, that's where all of the nasturtiums will be. My sunflowers go in this back corner here. I'll do a couple of the sunflowers as well as the Mexican sunflowers. They'll be in that corner and grow up over the fence. And then the Dara I can stick, I do perennials over here and I do a few more perennials over in this corner as well. So I will stick some of the Dara possibly in that area and see if I can get them growing up, and then dill will just sprinkle in and around. I kind of got a plan to have like a very wild, whimsical, cottagey garden look. So I think having like dill, and I may bring some of my chamomile down and direct sow some of that, but having dill and chamomile kind of spilling out in random areas, I think will really add to that like fun, whimsy look. That's the plan anyways. So I just wanted to share those seeds with you because I'm excited about them. And if you're seed shopping, now is a good time to get those seeds and prepare for next season. Anyways, she's awake, so I'm gonna go hang out with her. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next video. Bye-bye.